The fluorescent lights of the corporate office had never felt colder than they did that December afternoon. Sarah Mitchell, CEO of Mitchell & Associates, stood frozen in the doorway of the break room, her hand still clutching the festive questionnaire she'd been distributing to employees all morning. The paper trembled slightly as she watched her janitor, Miguel Rodriguez, carefully fold his sandwich wrapper, the same plain bologna sandwich he brought every single day, and tuck it into his worn lunch bag with the kind of care most people reserved for precious things. She'd asked him the same question she'd asked everyone else: "What's your Christmas wish this year?" His answer, delivered with tired eyes and a gentle smile, had shattered something inside her she didn't know needed breaking. "I wish my daughter could see her mother's face one more time." 6 weeks earlier, Sarah had inherited the company from her father, along with his philosophy: employees are numbers on a spreadsheet, nothing more. She'd spent her first month implementing efficiency protocols, cutting costs, and maintaining the professional distance her MBA professors had drilled into her. The company Christmas party was her first real test as the new boss, and she'd decided to add a personal touch, a simple questionnaire asking employees about their holiday wishes. Marketing gold, she'd thought. Perfect for the company newsletter. She'd collected dozens of responses that morning. Designer handbags, tropical vacations, the latest iPhone, gaming consoles for kids, a promotion. Everyone wanted something, and Sarah had smiled politely at each answer, mentally calculating the value of gift cards she'd distribute at the party. But Miguel's answer had stopped her cold. Now, watching him through the break room window as he returned to his cleaning cart, Sarah felt the careful walls she'd built around herself beginning to crack. She'd seen Miguel hundreds of times, mopping floors after hours, emptying trash bins, always with that same quiet dignity, but she'd never really seen him at all. That evening, instead of heading home to her penthouse apartment, Sarah found herself sitting in her father's old office, staring at Miguel's employee file. 53 years old. Employed for 7 years. Perfect attendance record. 3 dependents listed: wife Carmen, daughter Rosa, son Mateo. In the emergency contact section, Carmen's name was crossed out. Someone had written, "Deceased," in small letters beside it, dated just 4 months ago. Sarah's finger traced the word. Deceased. Such a clinical term for something that had clearly torn a family apart. She pulled up Miguel's payroll records. His salary was barely above minimum wage, and in recent months, he'd picked up every available overtime shift. Her father had noted in the file, reliable. Doesn't complain. Keeps salary minimal, he won't leave. The words made Sarah feel sick. She spent the next 2 days doing something she'd never done before. She investigated the life of someone she'd considered invisible. She learned that Carmen Rodriguez had died of cancer in August, leaving behind medical bills that had bankrupted the family. She discovered that 14-year-old Rosa was now in therapy, struggling with grief and depression. She found out that Miguel had sold his car, his wife's jewelry, and most of their furniture to pay for treatments that ultimately couldn't save Carmen's life. And she learned why Miguel had answered her question the way he did. Rosa was losing her memories of her mother. At 14, she was forgetting the sound of Carmen's laugh, the exact shade of her eyes, the way she hummed while cooking. The family had no videos, their only camera had been pawned during Carmen's illness. They had just a handful of photographs, most damaged by water when their basement apartment flooded during a storm. Miguel's Christmas wish wasn't for himself. It was never for himself. He wanted his daughter to remember the woman who had loved her unconditionally, who had fought so hard to stay alive for her children, who had made their small apartment feel like a palace through the sheer force of her love. Sarah couldn't sleep that night. She kept seeing Miguel's face, the way his voice had cracked when he'd spoken about his daughter's grief, the dignity with which he'd immediately apologized for oversharing, before returning to his work. The next morning, Sarah made a decision that would change everything. She canceled the expensive catered Christmas party. She returned the Crystal Awards she'd ordered for top performers. She stopped the printing of the newsletter that was supposed to feature employee wishes alongside photos of executive generosity. Instead, she made a phone call to an old college friend who worked in technology and memory preservation. Then she did something her father would have called corporate suicide. She knocked on the door of Miguel's apartment. Miguel answered in his undershirt, clearly startled to see his boss standing in the dimly lit hallway of his apartment building. Behind him, Sarah could see a small Christmas tree made from wire hangers and green tissue paper. Handmade decorations dangled from its branches. "Mr. Rodriguez," Sarah said, her voice softer than she'd ever heard it sound in a boardroom. "May I come in? I'd like to talk to you about your Christmas wish." What happened over the next 2 weeks became the story that would later spread across the internet, shared millions of times with captions like, "Faith in humanity restored," and, "The Christmas miracle we all needed." Sarah learned the names of Miguel's children. She sat in their cramped living room and listened to Rosa talk about her mother, about Carmen's kindness, her terrible singing voice, her gift for making anyone feel special. She met Mateo, who at 11 was trying desperately to be the man of the house, taking on responsibilities no child should carry. Sarah didn't write them a check, though she could have easily solved their financial problems with the amount she spent on shoes each month. Instead, she gave them something more valuable. She gave them time, attention, and connection. She brought in a memory preservation team who spent hours interviewing Miguel and his children, recording every story about Carmen. They tracked down distant relatives who had photos and videos no one knew existed. They found Carmen's best friend from childhood, who had a recording of Carmen singing at a high school talent show. They located her former coworkers who shared stories of her kindness and humor. But the real magic happened when Sarah discovered that Carmen had kept journals, dozens of them, stored in a box at her sister's house in Texas. Journals filled with letters to her children, advice for their future, expressions of love that would outlive her body. On Christmas Eve, Sarah gathered Miguel and his children not in a corporate office but in her own home. She'd transformed her formal living room into a warm, intimate space where they could experience the gift she'd helped create. A comprehensive digital archive of Carmen's life, complete with restored photos, recovered videos, and her journals converted into beautiful bound books. "I don't understand," Miguel whispered, tears streaming down his weathered face as he held a video tablet showing Carmen dancing at Rosa's 8th birthday party, footage recovered from a damaged phone his sister-in-law had kept in a drawer. "Your wish," Sarah said, her own eyes wet, "was for your daughter to see her mother's face. But what I learned, Mr. Rodriguez, is that your whole family needed this. You all needed to know that Carmen's love didn't die with her body. It lives in every memory, every story, every word she left behind." Rosa was sobbing as she clutched one of her mother's journals, reading words written specifically for her 14th birthday, words Carmen had written while sick, knowing she might not be there to deliver them in person. "Mija," Carmen had written, "when you read this, I want you to know that love doesn't end. It transforms. Every time you laugh, I'm laughing with you. Every time you're brave, my strength is yours. You carry me in your DNA, in your heart, in the way you love others. I'm not gone, I'm just loving you differently now." That night, something shifted in Sarah Mitchell. She understood finally what her father had never grasped, that the people who worked for her weren't numbers on a spreadsheet. They were whole human beings with complex lives, deep sorrows, and dreams that mattered just as much as her own. The following Monday, Sarah implemented new policies at Mitchell & Associates. She increased wages across the board for service staff. She established a hardship fund for employees facing medical crises. She created a culture where people weren't just workers, they were valued human beings deserving of dignity, respect, and compassion. But the real transformation wasn't in the policies. It was in Sarah herself. She'd entered that break room as a CEO. She'd emerged as something more important, a human being willing to see the humanity in others. Miguel's Christmas wish had broken her heart. But sometimes, hearts need to break before they can expand large enough to hold what truly matters. As Sarah watched Miguel's family heal over the months that followed, she realized the greatest gift she'd ever given wasn't the memory archive or the financial support. It was simply this: she had seen Miguel. Really seen him. And in doing so, she'd given him the most precious thing one human can offer another, the acknowledgement that his pain mattered, his love mattered, his family mattered. That Christmas, Miguel had wished for his daughter to see her mother's face one more time. Instead, his daughter, and his entire family, received something even more precious: the understanding that love, once given, never truly dies. It simply finds new ways to express itself, sometimes through the unlikeliest of angels. Even angels who start out as corporate CEOs who needed to remember their own humanity.